Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back. Another edition here of Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. Today we have with us Tara McGuire, and the book is Holden After and Before. It's a love letter for a son lost to overdose. Tara McGuire. Tara, thanks for being with us today on what must be kind of difficult to discuss this situation.
Yeah, I've been talking about the book quite a lot lately, and it has been a lot, but I'm pleased to be talking with you.
And first of all, we want to say how very sorry we are for your loss, because actually I can't get past page 21. I'm tearing up too much, so I'll keep trying.
Oh, wow. Yeah, keep going. It gets easier, I'm told.
You're told, yes. Tara McGuire, the book is Holden After and Before. The grief is clear and never-ending, it seems, but did writing this book help keep Holden alive for you a little bit longer, maybe?
Definitely. That was one of my objectives with the book, just to keep him walking around and living and doing his thing, and then hopefully people can get to know him a little bit through reading the book.
And can you give us a little bit of background, like how old he was when this situation happened and things like that?
Holden died in the summer of 2015 when he was 21 years old.
And it was deemed to be an opioid overdose?
That's right, yeah. It was a combination of heroin and alcohol that he had ingested, neither of which on their own would have killed him, but together they're not a good combination.
Not at the best of times, no. So is that what you were seeking, was a little bit of, I won't use the word closure because I don't like that, or is this a bigger story about the tragedy of addiction and lives ending a bit too soon?
Yeah, I don't like that word either, because grief never ends. You're never closing it, and I think it changes and evolves over time. I felt that Holden's story was an important one to tell because everyone who has died inside this crisis has a life and has families and friends and personalities and gifts. And I didn't want, I felt like there were just so many statistics and news stories. So I wanted to have a personal angle, and maybe people will understand some of the different reasons why people use substances.
What do you think the reasons were for Holden, in Holden's case? Or do you have any insight into that?
Well, I was trying to figure that out, through writing the book. And I think that, like many people, Holden struggled with his mental health, and taking a break from the world through substances was kind of appealing for him. And then I believe it just got a little out of hand at the end.
Yeah, and I don't want to be, put myself into the story, but I know I used to drink, well, up until about last week, a lot, because I always felt better about myself when I was drinking. So maybe that has something
Absolutely.
to do with, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think any time we use substances, and I understand, Dennis, I have a couple of drinks now and then, and I would, as a teenager, I would smoke pot, and it does make you feel better, and it's fun, at times. Mm-hmm. And most people that use substances don't end up having a problem with them. They're just manageable. And then for others, maybe physiologically and emotionally, they become more problematic and become substance use disorders. And I think that's where Holden was. But, we can't be putting judgments on people, because we all use different methods to either numb our pain or avoid things or just take a break from life for a while.
Exactly. And Tara McGuire is here. She's a writer, voiceover actor, former broadcaster. We'll get to that in a while. Talking about the book Holden After and Before. So when did you start writing this book?
I started writing a few poems and just journaling and that kind of thing about a year after Holden died. So that would be 2016. And then I started taking a couple of workshops and getting a little more education. I was always a writer as a radio broadcaster, but that's a different kind of writing. So then I started gathering education, I guess, in the area of creative writing. And this work, a very early draft of this work, was my thesis at UBC in the creative writing program there. So I would say the writing took about 5 years, and then there was a lot of revision and editorial work for another couple of years. So probably 7 years altogether.
Wow. What was the family reaction when this came out, or did they read stuff before and leading up to the publication? So.
Yeah, well, my husband and my daughter are both in the book. Neither of them have read it yet. They're, it's up to them whether they want to read it or not. They were very supportive all the way along with my writing practice. And so they always just, I would say to them, you guys have to read this because it's going to be published and I don't want to say anything that you disagree with. And they just told me that they trusted me and they know the book comes from a place of love and it's a piece of art. So they may not agree with all of the portrayals, but they respect my right to present it however I feel is appropriate.
And it's Holden After and Before, a love letter for a son lost to overdose. The opioid epidemic is never ending. Do you see any positive moves on any governments? It's the same here in Saskatchewan. We see stories every day, especially in Vancouver, about opioid addiction. Is there anything government can do?
Well, there's certainly a lot of attention now. Substance use disorder is a very, very complex issue. I don't think there are more people using substances. I think there are more people dying because of the toxic supply. And so there are some mitigating factors. I mean, here in Vancouver, we have the Overdose Prevention Society, so people can use drugs in an area that they know if they overdose, they'll be resuscitated, basically. And then there's a lot of research being done into safe supply. But there's a lot of people working in science and in policy, and that's not my thing. I'm just approaching it from a personal angle. But I do think that, we now have in BC a provincial minister of addiction. So we are definitely starting to make some changes, but they're not fast enough for people who have family members who are struggling.
And a lot of people, I think, are still of the opinion that if a person has an addiction, it's that person's fault because they just didn't snap out of it and just didn't, get up and go and pull themselves up by their bootstraps and tackle the problem and fight and win. Do you find that
Which
too
is
still?
Categorically wrong. It's categorically incorrect and very naive. We know that substance use disorder is a treatable illness like any other illness, like cancer, for example, that comes back. People go into remission and then the cancer comes back. Do we shame them and make them, tell them it's their fault for having cancer, even if their lifestyle may have contributed to it? Absolutely not. We treat people for their illnesses. And I think the big change that we can make is treating substance use disorder as a physical and a mental illness and offering supports when people ask for them and knowing that recovery is a lifelong journey. So is diabetes. So are many, many illnesses that people have, and we continue to treat them all the way through people's lives. And there's no judgment. There's no stigma. Even if someone is, for example, a smoker or, has done something that may have contributed to their own illness, there's absolutely no stigma associated with it. So one of the things we can do is take substance use disorders out of the criminal arena and put it into the health arena.
And it's like you said about mental illness. If someone breaks a leg, you don't go, "Oh, too bad. You shouldn't have broken that leg. You should know better than that." But if you have substance of your mental health problems, the person is to blame. And I never understood that, but we won't go into that because it's too complex a subject. But we have had lots of podcasts previously all about mental health, mental illness with people from hockey players and suicide survivors, things like that. So it's ongoing. I think the stigma seems to be lessening a tad. Tara McGuire here, Holden After and Before the book. The family reaction we talked about. When you look back, I'm sure you have do you have any kind of time where you blame yourself, if you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, if I'd only done this or only done that?
Of course. I think that's a very natural part of the grieving process.
Right.
For anybody who's lost someone, you always wonder what you could have done differently. And I've had a lot of soul searching and a lot of therapy, and I've been pretty hard on myself. That's covered quite a bit in the book as well. I think probably if I could go back and do anything differently, I would have asked more questions and I would have listened more carefully.
But this is now and that was then, and you can't go back and change it. So it's really a difficult situation. Holden After and Before, Tara McGuire, the author. Other than that, why do you write? You've got like you say, an MFA from the School of Creative Writing at UBC. You've always been a writer. Is there a reason why you write?
I've always just really loved language. I've always been a really big reader. And I find that writing is a way to process my thinking, to ask questions of myself, to discover how I feel about certain things. It's a place to sort of organize my thinking and my emotions, and it doesn't necessarily end up with solutions, but I love the creative process that comes from writing, and I love the challenge of trying to do it well and to try and write something beautiful. And I hope that people see in the book some writing skill aside from the obvious content. I hope people enjoy the way that it's written. It's a two-voiced hybrid memoir, and you've said you haven't read it all yet, so I'll just explain it. It's in two voices. It's in my voice as a memoir, and then also we jump into these fictional elements, which are in Holden's voice as a third-person present tense narrative line. So it's a pretty complex structure, and I really enjoyed the challenge of that too.
And how many revisions did you go through before the final product came out?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. 1,000? I don't know. A lot, an awful lot. My process is I wouldn't revise the whole thing, but I would definitely go through and revise and revamp and remove and add and change and alter. And I restructured the book many times. I would say like full-scale overhauls, at least 6.
Whoa. And it's beautifully written as well, as you said, as you hope people will recognize. And I do, right off the bat, I recognize the extraordinary writing capabilities you've exposed in more ways than one in this book, Holden After and Before. And Tara, just a few more questions. We both went to BCIT. Did you know that?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. When were you there?
Class of 69, long before you were even born.
Okay. Oh, I was born. I was definitely born. But that's cool. What did you do there?
Broadcast communications, they called it. So with Brian Atkinson was in my class, and
wow,
yeah, and John Ansel. Now I don't know when you were there, but
John Ansel was one of my professors, and it was shortly after I was there that he died of a brain tumor, which was very, very sad.
Right. Yeah.
But I knew him quite well, and Brian Atkinson is still a friend. So yeah, I definitely remember those people. They're lovely.
And when were you at QMFM? Because I worked at CFA in the 70s and 80s. So.
Oh, I started at QMFM. Let's see, Holden was 1.5, so that would be 95.
Okay, sure.
And then I finished there in 2014.
Okay, so like Stu Ferguson and Hagenbuck and Carl LaGrace and Clara, and who was in the newsroom when you were there? Was B.R. Bradbury still there?
B.R. was there at the beginning, and then we didn't end up having much of a newsroom after a while. John Hadley was there, Manny Bazunas. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a little bit.
I had the pleasure of meeting B.R. Bradbury, and, Robin is just such a riot, and Carl. Yeah, I know all of those people.
Yeah. But you didn't come to the CFUN. Oh, well, you weren't a CFUN employee, so you wouldn't come to the CFUN reunion we had a few years back. But no.
I was always a big listener. I had a CFUN sticker on my car.
No, get out. Good for you.
Of course.
Of course.
The round one with the blue writing?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I have my 2 CFUN jackets still. That's what I have. Can't get into them anymore. But, yeah. Yeah, I did. I was a creative director in the 70s, and then I came back in the 80s, writer, and then I was morning news backup with BR for a while, and did all sorts of these kind of interviews that kind of got me going, and then I sort of dropped out for 40 years, but here we are back again. Holden After and Before, the book by Tara McGuire. It's a love letter for a son lost to overdose. I highly recommend it. Tara, what do you have next coming out? Anything new in the hopper there?
Well, I've been writing quite a few essays. I'm hoping to start work on a fiction project, but I haven't really fine-tuned it quite enough to tell you about it yet.
Okay. Well, when it's all ready, maybe we'll do one of these again. So thank you for your time today.
Sure, that'd be great.
And again, best wishes and our heartfelt sympathies for your loss.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.